Hey guys, coming back to you with another video. Here we are finally at war. Everybody, the world is finally at war. And we're going to talk about what life was like for soldiers and what kind of life they were living while they were at war. Because as you'll see, it wasn't exactly a good one. But before we get to some of those nitty-gritty details, let's look at what's going on. So, on the Western Front, we have Germany plans to go through Belgium, sweeping around Paris and capturing it from behind. The French stopped the Germans just short of Paris. They're finally able to. Germany was overwhelming in the very beginning of this war. Nobody could really mount a defense against them that was successful. Germany was so overwhelming. And then at the first Battle of the Marne, the French were able to stop them. They were able to stop this unbeatable army. So, since Germany can't break through the French resistance, they're going to dig in, essentially. And dig in, I mean literally dig in. They're going to dig into the ground and start creating these vast tunnels of what are called trenches. And these trenches are going to stretch from the English Channel to Switzerland, which, if you don't know your geography, it's several hundreds of miles long. And they are about approximately 6 to 7, some even 8 feet deep, depending on where you are and what the ground was like and how long people were going to be there. And it wasn't just mazes of trenches. There would be entire rooms, bunkers, command posts, all dug into the ground. But coming back to the world at war, the Allies declare war against the Ottoman Empire, fighting against them at a place called Gallipoli. And this Gallipoli battle is a disaster for the Allies. The British gain support of the Saudis of Saudi Arabia. They're going to use Lawrence of Arabia. The Saudis attack the Turks of the Ottoman Empire. So you can kind of see it now. We're moving out of Europe, and we're starting to get the Middle East now involved. So we have Europe and Asia, or Eurasia, I should say. Asia with Russia being involved. And now we're kind of coming down to the Middle East and getting the Saudi Arabians involved. The British and the Saudis at this time were pretty close. They were pretty decent friends. They were allies. And now the British are hoping to get the Saudis involved to help fight against the Ottoman Empire, which is primarily in the Middle East at this time. Japan, Great Britain, and Australia also attack German colonies in the Pacific. So hopefully you guys are starting to piece together and starting to see that now the world really is starting to get involved. What was once a European war is now really starting to spread across the Pacific, with Japan and Australia getting involved with attacking the colonies that Germany holds in the Pacific Ocean. But not to forget about the Eastern Front. This is the fight against Russia. And Russia is defeated at Battle of Tannenberg. Just one of their cities. Austria-Hungary is not as good as the Germans at fighting and winning. Italy was supposed to fight with Austria-Hungary and Germany. However, they betrayed them and fought against them. So, looking at the who's fighting who, just for a brief recap, we have two groups: the Allies, Russia, Great Britain, and France. The Central Powers, Central Powers. We have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. I know we've been talking about a lot of countries here, so that was just hopefully to give you a brief recap and just help remember who's fighting against who. Yes, I mentioned other countries like Australia and Japan. However, the ones I just mentioned with the who's fighting who section, those are the 6 predominant countries that are fighting this battle right now. Okay, moving on to the Great Slaughter. Fighting on the Western Front marked trench warfare. This is a brand new type of fighting. By 1916, so 2 years into the war, the trenches were very elaborate. We have barbed wire, we have concrete bunkers, we have, quote, what's called no man's land. And the idea of trench warfare, and I'll show you a video clip of this in class, but the idea is that you would have your large artillery, your missiles and such, well, at the time, like grenades, rockets, that kind of stuff. You would bombard the enemy with them. You would just kind of start firing as many as you possibly can. This could last up to a few weeks if you wanted it, and depending how much artillery you had. But once the bombardment was done, the whistle would then go off, and men would climb out of the trenches in a giant long row, and they would start charging toward the enemy. The goal was to try and take the enemy's trench, try to take that land. But what you would often have is, while the men were charging, you'd have the enemy that they were charging would have mounted machine guns strategically posted across the trench, and then they would just start blasting away and firing as the men were charging. And essentially what you'd have is one side would charge, they would be defeated, and then a couple hours later that other side would then charge, and you just have these back and forth charging throughout the entire battle. And now why it happened. Trench warfare occurred because of the Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan did not work as it planned out. Remember, France was able to defend themselves. So the Germans shifted to the defense and established trenches in anticipation of an Allied counterattack. As the Germans knew that the Schlieffen Plan wasn't going to work, they just dug in, expecting the Allies to come and try and take it. And then it just kind of happened from there. Both sides just stayed. Both sides dug in, and then neither side really gained any ground. Essentially what's going to happen is we have a stalemate. Neither side is going to gain any kind of ground while the trench warfare is going. It's just going back and forth. To give you an idea of the trenches that were built and some of the plans that were happening for this, what you have in red is essentially what the Germans' plan was. The red is German. You have them coming across in 5 different waves, essentially, what you could say. Each one longer than the last. And then the end goal was to take all of that land to the west of Paris, and then kind of start trying to move eastward. So Germany essentially is going to try and take the outer parts of France first, and then start moving inward. Yeah, so I kind of already said this a little bit with 2 slides ago. Crossing no man's land was very difficult. I'll show you a picture of a trench here in a little bit, so that way you can kind of see where the no man's land is and the bombardment, the artillery would be, and such. The enemy would use machine guns to mow down the enemy, and hundreds of thousands of men would be lost in a single battle. Like I said, and it's both sides that would lose hundreds of thousands of men. Neither side really gained victories using this trench warfare. This essentially just was a stalemate for the entire time that they're using this tactic. But here you can kind of see what we have going. You see that off more towards the center part, we have the trenches that the men would be in. You just have men, and oftentimes you would have beds, well, makeshift beds, kind of cut into the dirt as well, and that's where the guys would sleep. You'd have different concrete block houses for machine guns, that little white thing in the center. All the way towards the back right, you can see that's where the long-range artillery is. These artillery rounds essentially fire at any troops that are coming in, or any planes, or anything like that. Towards the left, all the way towards the left, you have essentially the no man's land. There's barbed wire, there could be landmines, there could be anything really. You'd have, because of the weather and there's no vegetation around with this trench warfare, you'd often have piles of water, piles of mud, essentially just making it even harder to cross for the troops. They wouldn't really have any kind of solid ground to move on. They'd have to kind of just keep walking through the mud as they were charging enemy fire. So I'll probably show this in class just to give you guys a little bit more details at that time, but this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what it was like with the trench system. But parts of a trench, and I have another slide to show you with this, or another picture to show you with this. You have the fire steps, and this is the steps where soldiers would stand to fire an advancing enemy. So if the enemy is coming at them, this is just where guys would kind of point their guns out and start firing away at them. You'd have duckboard. Those are the floorboards for the trench, just to keep their soldiers' feet off of mud and water. And as you'll see, it didn't do that good of a job. And then dugouts. Those are small caves where soldiers would sleep. This is just kind of give you a more in-depth idea of what an actual trench would look like. So yeah, I mean, down in the bottom you have the trench boards, I should say. You have the barbed wire off to the right. But yeah, just give you a little bit of an idea of what these trenches would look like if you were fighting in them. Here are some pictures of men. Oftentimes these trenches weren't that deep, as you can see in the bottom left picture. Most of the time the guys were down on their knees or crawling, like ducking down. Other times the trenches would be at least 8-9 feet deep, so that way the guys could stand up fully and not have to worry about having their head shot off. Life in the trenches. A couple things to deal with: lice, rats, trench foot. I'll show you a picture of some trench foot. Trench foot essentially is what happens when your feet stay in water for days. Your feet start to rot, and if you don't amputate them, you essentially could risk death from it. Your body essentially would kind of just continue to rot from the inside out. Give you an idea of what trench foot looks like after it's happened. You get some boils, you get some skin starting to rub off. If any of you have ever taken a bath for a long time and see your fingers start to kind of get that old person kind of feeling to them or look to them, that's kind of the beginnings essentially of what would become trench foot. So just to give you a little bit of an idea for that. Daily routine. Every day at dawn, soldiers were ordered to stand to on the firing step in anticipation of an enemy attack. On a regular basis, the enemy would unleash gas attacks, artillery barrages, and sniper fire. It would be uncommon to go more than a few minutes without hearing some kind of gun go off, essentially. Entry. Moving on though, that stalemate is going to last for years. It's going to last for about 3 or 4 years. I'm going to go over the entry of the United States very briefly, because you guys probably had this a lot in your U.S. history class. But Wilson wants to stay neutral, so to do that, he sells materials to both Great Britain and Germany. So that way he's not playing favorites. German unrestricted submarine warfare sinks any ship in the restricted zone around Great Britain. So that also means United States citizens are going to be killed when the ship called the Lusitania will be there and be sunk, and with approximately 100 U.S. citizens will be killed during that. However, even though the United States tried to say it was a passenger ship, it actually was not. It literally was a supply ship for Great Britain. Germany is also going to try and get involved in propaganda. They're going to send the Zimmerman note, and that is a telegram from Germany to Mexico asking for help against the U.S. Essentially, if Mexico were to attack the U.S. and if Germany were to win the war, then Germany will help Mexico get back the land that the United States took in the Spanish-American War. Impact of war. Once again, just really quick, you guys probably took this or got this material in U.S. history class, but when the U.S. gets involved, it's a complete mobilization of resources and people. Millions of men serving the military, power of the government increases, home front has changed as well. We're going to start doing the draft. Young men are going to be required to serve. And our economy will start being controlled by the government during this time of war. So that's it, guys. That is the end of the war. Next up, as you can see, is the video about the end of war. So until next time, guys, I'll see you later.